Hello everyone, my name is Lowko and welcome to some more StarCraft 2 Legacy of the Void. Today I want to be going over a more technical subject because apparently a lot of you guys really do enjoy me talking about a more strategic approach to playing StarCraft 2. Now, as you may be aware, yesterday they released a minor little patch to the game where they basically changed up a bunch of the maps. And the very first thing I'm saying in this particular game here is a Terran on Central Protocol, because this game was actually played before that patch. I played this roughly 2 days ago as one of the very first games over on the live stream, and I immediately mentioned to my opponent as well right off the bat that normally this map is all Zerg versus Zerg, and the reason for that is because Zergs can go ahead and blind counter Terran players. Now I'm gonna be pausing the game right here just for a little bit, and I'm gonna be going over the map layout just for a little while. So as you may be aware, this map is a 4-player map that has all of the spawn locations enabled in the original version of it. We're gonna go over the changes that they made to the map in just a little bit as well. However, in this particular case, my opponent spawned on the vertical position. So if we compare, for example, where we spawned, if we compared the positioning of the naturals, you can see that my natural is right over here, and my opponent is literally right over there. Now, normally, back in the good old days, these close rush distances would be pretty, detrimental to Zerg players for the most part, because there is going to be, just Marines on your doorstep within a couple seconds, and most of the time you're not going to be able to respond in time in order to do that. Now, in Legacy of the Void, however, creep spread and things like Ravagers that got added to the game, or not, creep spread didn't get added, but it's significantly faster right now than it used to be, actually make early game defense so much easier. And if we have a look at this Terran player here as well, and I'm actually going to be putting the vision on him. If you look at this position from this dude, just look at where he spawned, right? He takes his main base right here because that's where he spawns. He takes his natural right here just because there's a little doorway that makes it a little bit easier for him to get over here. However, on this particular map and in some other maps right now that are out too, where do you take your third base? Now, in this particular case, since we spawned in the vertical locations, he cannot be taking this one, right? I mean, if he takes this base right here, he's gonna be right at my doorstep. There is absolutely no way that he can go ahead and safely defend that versus all of the Zerg shenanigans. So, in this particular case, he's gonna have to expand either all the way at the gold base, right? Which is very far away from his natural. I mean, that rush distance is probably that distance right there is probably longer than the rush distance between our two bases. Or he's gonna be taking it over here on the northern side of the map by knocking down the rocks in the back right here. Now, both of these locations are, for Terran players and for Protoss players alike as well, actually, practically impossible to take. I mean, if they take those two bases, they're basically saying, alright, if you're gonna, attack my natural, I won't have any defenses at my third, and if you attack my third, I won't have any defenses at my natural. So Zerg players can just simply, send, small groups of armies over at the third, and then the main army at the natural. Or, the main army at the third, if they take the gold base, and then a smaller army in the natural. And most of the time, at least in my experience, if Terran players try and play macro games on this particular map, they have absolutely no chance at winning, just because they can't defend both scenarios at once. Now, it gets even worse, because in the vertical spawn locations, which we are in right now, if the Zerg player is playing Roach Ravager, which I am going to be doing in this game, he's basically gonna be left alone to whatever he likes to do. Now, how do Terran players usually go ahead and counter Roach Ravager play? They usually try and get multiple upgrades on their bio units, hold back the Zerg player by using all kinds of early game shenanigans, adding on Banshees, adding on Siege Tank drops, adding on bio drops in the middle part of the game, just to try and get that 2-2 upgrades out, at which point they can finally start trading a little more efficiently with Zerg. Now, the problem on this particular map as well, when you spawn vertically, is the fact that if you want to go ahead and drop, where are you gonna go? Are you gonna drop straight from natural to natural? There's no way the Zerg isn't gonna catch this with relative ease. Are you gonna go for the main base? You can't actually, because there's no dead space behind this, and queens are just gonna shoot at your medevac non-stop. And if you want to be dropping the third base from the Zerg player, which oftentimes is gonna be taken either here or over here, which is easily defendable because of creep, you're gonna have to send it all the way across the map and basically make it go everywhere. So, what does this mean? Well, there's a couple of assumptions that I will immediately make right off the bat, and I'm actually going to be unpausing the game as well right here, because otherwise I'm just going to be talking all the time. But there's a couple of assumptions I'm making right here. If my opponent spawns in the vertical position, I know very well that A, he's not going to be able to, basically take a third base. right? He's not going to be able to take a third base like we discussed because it's super hard to defend, or he has to turtle up hardcore, at which points I can just take the rest of the map, which, you know, I don't really mind doing. And B, I also know that because of this very fact, he is very likely to go for some sort of all-in. And that is true for every single spawn location on this map. Third bases are hard to take on every single time, like every single time this happens. And I am just basically going ahead and blind countering what is going on from the Terran player right now. So because he can't go for drops, because he doesn't really have an answer to Roach Ravager at all, just because he has no way of really slowing me down because of the spawn locations, I'm in a great position to just simply do whatever the fuck I please. And I'm gonna go ahead and play Roach Ravager, blind countering him from the very get-go and just playing a super safe all-round game where I know that there's absolutely nothing the Terran player can do to really mess with my strategy. So I don't know actually if I get blind spore crawlers right here. I may very well get a couple spores just to be 100% safe. But I mean, you'll notice it very quickly what happens. Now, what exactly did change to the map? You may be wondering. Well, the map got changed. It's still in the map pool, but there's a couple of minor differences. First off, the rocks in the main base have actually been removed in all of the spawn locations. So all of these rocks right here that basically make the, you know, the horizontal, like, rush distances relatively short as well. There's a little bit of Reaper aggression, by the way, early on. I'm gonna be microing against that. But those rocks have been removed and it's now just like a solid wall off if I'm not mistaken. Plus, they have removed the vertical spawn locations. So, you know, if I'm spawning in the bottom left corner of the map, I know for the fact that my opponent can only be spawning on the eastern sides of the map instead of, you know, the left side of the map as well. He's only going to be able to spawn on the opposite side. Now, obviously, that means that all of a sudden, let's have a look. Let's actually pause it once again. Let's say I know for a fact, or let's say the Terran player spawned right here, right? And he can take these two bases with ease. Let's be aware of the fact that right now, there's no way of me spawning in the vertical places. He has actually the option to take this as the third base, which is much easier to defend, right? Instead of like taking these ones at the third base. So there's a couple of changes that do make it better. Now, the one thing that I usually like doing whenever there's some minor patch changes is check out the Battle.net forums. And I want to warn you guys right off the bat as well, if you are a little bit sensitive to shit talking on the Battle.net forums or on any forums in general, I would highly recommend not visiting them, because oftentimes there's a lot of Zerg players in particular, also yesterday, that got very upset at like the balance designers of StarCraft for changing up this map. And I sincerely hope that some of you that have been complaining about it do see this video and sort of like watch this game also from the Terran's point of view. Because honestly, if you complain about this map being changed, you know, it's just probably because you don't really understand how tough of a position Terran and Protoss are in. And the fact of the matter is, like I said in the beginning of this game as well, is that I went ahead and just said to my opponent, look, it's a Terran on Central Protocol. I mean, it's all Zerg for the Zerg. Practically all of the Terran players, all of the Protoss players downvote this map, at least before it got changed. Right now, it should be technically a little bit better. It should be a little bit easier for Terran players and Protoss players alike to defend third bases and to get third bases to begin with. But in this particular case, you can see that, you know, if you spawn in these locations or you spawned in these locations in the previous patch, you're gonna be in a pretty good position. Now, these maps show up every now and then. These maps and spawn locations show up every now and then. And this only really works in those spawn locations. Now, one thing I actually haven't really, you know, touched upon yet, but let me finish my thought real quick. On some maps, you will notice this every now and then. Zerg is going to be in a superior position just because of the location that you spawn in, and on some of the other ones, you're going to be in a, you know, much worse position. Now, because the rush distance between the bases is so extremely short, I can also dedicate 2 of my queens to creep spreading, and because the area outside of the natural is huge and wide open, I can just spread creep like my life is depending on it. Now, in this particular case, my opponent is gonna go ahead and, you know, go for some siege tank drops. He's running into the issue that he can't really drop anywhere because there's creep everywhere already. I mean, like 5 minutes into the game, I'm nearly at his natural already. And, I mean, I'm just pushing him back before the game has really even begun, right? This is practically the earliest kinds of aggression that he could do, and since I'm just blind countering any kind of early aggression, I'm in a solid spot. Now, one of the things he could have done, and what he could have gone for, which is really popular, especially in the current meta, is to just simply play a mass Reaper opener, but the only issue with that is that he's gonna have to proxy the barracks somewhere in the middle side of the map or something, because it's still a 4-player map. He doesn't know by default where I spawned, right? So most of the time, especially on this map in the old version, you can go ahead and blind counter a 2-base all-in. I'm still doing this most likely in most of the other scenarios as well, where I'm up against a Terran or a Protoss player on this particular map. Just knowing that even with the like easier to defend third base, there's a very big chance that they are still not gonna be able to do that easily at all. So you can see, like, you know, close to 6 minutes into the game, 5.5, 550. I mean, I haven't even really been focusing on this. I mean, this is by no means perfect crew spread. I'm already at the front door, right? I'm having vision of his potential third base at the gold. I'm having vision of his other third base with the blue minerals up north. I got my own third base up. If you take a look at income, I got 10 more workers than him. I don't know if I'm producing anymore. No, I'm not producing anymore. This is perfect though, because at this point, I know that I can just non-stop produce army. I'm going for a +1/+1 Roach Ravager speed timing attack, and I'm just simply sitting outside of his natural. And this is why Terran players and Protoss players alike do not play Central Protocol. There's no way for them to really be able to hold any of this aggression at all. They can't really stop this from happening, and other than cheesing, they don't really have very many options other than downvoting the map. Now, currently, this is obviously going to be fixed, at least for the most part. They're gonna have a much easier time defending these sort of strategies, but at least hopefully it put a little bit like of a thought process in your head of like approaching every single map and every single spawn location with a unique strategy. Now, very many of you might not find that very relevant at all, because obviously this isn't going to be relevant until like maybe like Platinum League and up. Because most of the time you're just going to be struggling with just producing enough drones and actually producing the strategies. But if you are at the point in the game and like at a skill level where you can actually switch up the strategies depending on the map and then also depending on the spawn locations, oftentimes you just want to look at the replay and go like, alright, what could my opponent have done, right? Just simply open up the replay from your opponent's point of view. Just have vision at what your opponent was seeing at the time. Just look at what he could have done at this point. I mean, right now, he's expecting me to walk up the ramp, right? And I've done that multiple times in the past as well. But if you look at my position right now, there's absolutely no reason for me to walk up that ramp. I have vision of his third bases. I know that he is going to mine out roughly 10 minutes into the game from his main base. I mean, that main base is already starting to wear thin right now. A couple more minutes down the line, this base will be mined out, and he is forced off the line. He cannot stay there anymore. I'm replacing the lost creep tumors, and I'm just simply setting up a huge concave around his natural, or around his natural base, right at the bottom of it, so I know that when he decides to move out, there's absolutely no way he's going to be able to hold it. Now, just, you know, to rub salt in the wound, I'm creating +2 upgrades as well. I am getting some more drones for that third base too, but, you know, in reality, this map is just stupidly in favor of Zerg, in particular in the last version of it, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's still, for the most part, the case in the new version as well. So hopefully this explained at least the thought process behind certain strategies, and at least answered some of the complaining I've seen Zerg players do on the Battle.net forum. Granted, Zerg players and players alike everywhere complain no matter what. At the very least, I hope this explained a couple of things that you may have been wondering about. And other than that, I want to thank y'all for watching. Have an amazing day, alright? And I'll see you in the next one.